ever received a call from someone you knew that completely changed your business or opened a door that you'd want opened, or a door that you weren't even sure that you want to open, but when it opened, you were like, yes, that is the power of relationships. I'm Dr. Nadia, founder of the Doyen Agency and host of Sales Culture Unfiltered. And today I'm continuing our revenue resilience series, and I'm talking all about relationships. Today I'm talking about 5 different relationships that I suggest you audit in your business to increase your revenue resilience. Tune in. Welcome to Sales Culture Unfiltered, the podcast where we get real about what actually makes or breaks high-performing sales teams. I'm your host, Dr. Nadia Y. Brown, a sales culture and communication architect, and I work with sales leaders to engineer high-impact teams that hit their numbers without burning out or breaking down. On this show, we dive into unfiltered conversations with sales leaders, industry experts, and high-performing teams about what it really takes to drive revenue, retain talent, and build a winning sales culture. If you're tired of surface-level advice and want the strategies, challenges, and hard-won wins that actually matter, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. We've been having this conversation about revenue resilience, and recently I was putting the finishing touches on a revenue resilience plan for one of our diagnostic clients. And one of the sections that really jumped out at me for this particular plan was around relationships. Now, I know I've talked about pricing, we talked about positioning, but today I want to also discuss relationships. And I feel that there are a number of relationships that many founders have, but they haven't really looked at how to manage them or really utilize them in a more strategic fashion. So when we're looking at these different indicators, relationships are a piece of that because it's an indicator of where you may have some gaps when it comes to revenue resilience. So like I said, I'm working on this plan, which I absolutely love to do, and I'm totally geeking out on all the different pieces. And for this particular client, she has some really strong relationships. So she's fairly resilient in that area. But we also looked at how can we make this better, right? Because there were some opportunities for improvement. So today, I just want to kind of walk through so you can do your own relationship audit. Like you have relationships, you've been building this business. A lot of clients are referral based. Like they get a lot of referrals. So they're doing something right. So how do we make this better? And often one of the concerns as it relates to having a primarily referral based business is how do I not only make this more strategic, but how do I make this more predictable, right? Like, how do I feel like, or even implement like more control over this? Because it can feel like while a referral based business is great, you don't always know when the referrals are coming. It's just like, oh, surprise, there's a referral, yay. And then you get to work with this new client. But that doesn't really help when it comes to forecasting, to really doing any types of strategic planning. It's like, well, I don't know when my referrals are coming. So we're going to look at some different relationships, not necessarily just referral based, but how do you evaluate those relationships and identify opportunities to really put some more structure or even systems around that to help it really support your growth and your goals. So one of the first ones I want to talk about just briefly are prospect relationships. And this is one that many times I've been there too, where we can sometimes drop the ball when it comes to managing a relationship with prospects. And many times it's because we just don't have the systems in place to remind us for follow-ups. It's probably one of the easier ones. You have your process mapped out. You know when you have a sales conversation, you've had that sales conversation, and for whatever reason, they're not ready yet. So sometimes we allow ourselves to get in our feelings and we just kind of like kick them to the curb. Don't do that unless they're just not a good fit. And then also, it's like we sometimes forget. So if you're anything like me, I've gotten better, but I always tell myself in these things, I love a good sticky note. And so it's nothing for me to jot something down on a sticky note or jot something down in a journal and completely forget about it 2 days later because I moved on to something else. So I've gotten better and just, okay, let's implement the systems to support Nadia outside of having a sticky note system. Now, not all of my clients have sticky note problems, but I'm just saying. So when it comes to prospect relationships, and let me pause for a second and define what I consider to be a prospect. Because I think sometimes we use prospects and leads in a very similar or interchangeable way. So when I say prospects, this is someone who has raised their hand and indicated that they're willing or they want to learn more about working with you. Okay. And then oftentimes, when it comes to being able to really implement a solid follow up, you've usually had some sort of sales conversation or sales interaction. So, depending on the price or the investment level of your offers, it may not be an actual conversation. They may have gone to a sales page and they started the checkout process. That's an indicator that they are interested in whatever it is that you have offered them and they bailed, right? And you probably heard of those of, the abandoned cart sequences. So use your abandoned cart sequences when appropriate, but then also think abandoned cart even when you're talking, having an actual verbal conversation. So typically you're having sales conversations for those higher dollar investments, higher touch, all the things. Now you're actually talking to someone, either talking to you or someone on your team. So now you want to have a way, one, to track those conversations so you remember all the things that you talked about in those conversations, and then a way to follow up. Again, a lot of that can be automated and systematized, but it's a reminder for you to go back and do a quick audit. Are we doing this in all the different areas? Or for everyone on a team, or for however your company is set up. So that's one way with prospects. And again, you may not have the strongest relationship, but if you've been able to have an actual conversation, you have a whole lot more data to go by than when they were just a lead or you were just kind of out here like putting things out and hoping to have a conversation. So that is one relationship that I invite you to take some time to audit. Do we have the systems and processes in place to better nurture and manage this relationship? Because just because someone says no today doesn't mean they can't say no they could say no. Doesn't mean they can't say yes in the future. So taking the time to create the systems and being strategic around not only automation, but other fun ways, other on-brand ways. It may actually be a conversation future, a reach out, a text message, something snail mail, like you send them a gift or a postcard or a letter or anything. Like there's so many different ways. Of course, your system has to collect the information necessary to be able to execute on these things. You see where I'm going with this, right? So going back and looking at the system, if there is a way that you would like to follow up, typically just being able to text or do a phone call. If you're not collecting phone numbers, you can't do it. So even as you want to do it, you can't. Or it's going to require a whole lot of research and investigative skills that you may or may not have or have the time to do to find that person's information so that you can execute. So that's what I mean by really looking at your system and auditing. Do we have that information? If you want to be able to send something via snail mail, well, guess what? You need an actual mailing address, right? And where do you collect that information? If you're not collecting it, then let's go back and let's ask for it. They can always decline to share that information, but obviously if you ask, and you can even explain, like in some of our forms, it says like we would love to send stuff in the mail, and people actually give us their mailing address. So it gives us the opportunity to have a different touch point should we choose to use it. But again, it requires you to look at your systems and look at how I want to manage this relationship, because not everyone wants to send stuff in the mail. I get it. And also, do I have the information necessary to be able to execute on this when we're ready? Okay. The next one I want to look at is actually your current clients. Like it's so funny being in sales and helping clients with sales and increasing revenue and all the things. One of the things, because I always say sales and marketing go together like peanut butter and jelly. Like the marketing's off, the sales will be off, right? So when we're looking at a lot of times when I'm having conversations with potential clients or even my current clients, and they're like, I'm like, okay, well, tell me about what the challenges are. And often, very often, it's we need more leads. Sometimes that is true, but not all the time. So there is often a focus on more leads, more leads, more leads, more new leads. Let's get the new people in here. New, 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 new. right? And we spend a lot of time and energy and effort creating content, running ads, doing all the things for the new, which is not bad. And are we putting in even a fraction of that effort and energy into the current? So when we're looking at relationships, the next relationship I want you to evaluate or audit is, are your current clients? What does that relationship look like? One, and this is a delivery, are they having an excellent customer or client experience? So when you look at client delivery, how you are delivering things, is that an excellent experience? Are there areas that you may need to, make better? The other thing is we often look at current clients and delivery as in, here are all the things that I said I was going to do, and I want to make sure I check all the things off the box. Yes, fulfill your promises. And where can you add a little razzle dazzle or really strengthen that relationship? So don't wait. So, for example, if you're working with a client on a project, the project is like 6 months, and you have your different milestones, don't wait until the very end to now have this conversation around next steps. Create regular check-ins. How are things going? And it doesn't always have to be you. Someone on your team can know that at this milestone, 30, 60, 90 days, someone from the team checks in. It could be an automated email, it could be a phone call, it could be, I just want to know how things are going. What has been your experience thus far? What are the things that you really, really like about this experience? And what are the things that you would like to see better that we could do differently to make your experience that much more pleasurable, right? And if it's within the realm of reason, great, because you have opportunities. Many founders and their companies have the opportunity to work with their existing clients beyond whatever their current agreement or arrangement is. So you're working on this 6 month project. I almost guarantee that you're going to find, if you don't already have in mind, different ways that you can better serve or continue to serve that client beyond the scope of your current arrangement. It happens all the time. You go in and you're working on one thing and you're like, oh, I've identified like 7 other things that we can do. Well, when do you plan to have that conversation? Because not all the time do clients realize all the things that we can do. They just don't. And so building that into your process of, let's have a conversation around what I found, what I see, how I can best support. And then you guys can decide together whether or not now is the time. Do they have the budget? Like all the things. But if it's not part of your process and you're so focused on new, 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 and you're like, okay, we served these people, we checked all the boxes and now they're gone, then you've lost, I don't want to say lost, but you have missed an opportunity, or to at least have the conversation to present the client with the option and the knowledge that, oh, wait, I can work and stay here longer with someone I already know, like, and trust. I already like you. I'm already paying you. Let's keep going. Build it in. Manage over those relationships. But here's the thing. I don't want every interaction that you have with the client to always be about what's next or how they can continue to invest. So you don't want those conversations to only be about investment opportunities. So look for other ways to engage and have touch points that aren't about, okay, now what's the next investment and how else can we serve you? Those are important, but you need to have the balance, okay? Have the balance of, we're checking in. We want to make sure everything is good. Here's what we're seeing or hearing. Or are we just, want to provide an excellent client experience, complete straight up customer service, no sales. And then it just helps to set the stage that when you get to that, it doesn't feel like every time I talk to you, it's always about investing more money, right? You don't want your clients to feel that way. So it has to be strategic. It has to be on brand. So again, you have to make this your own, but that's an audit of a relationship I want you to take time to do. Like, how are we serving our clients? Are they having an excellent client experience? What are ways that we can better serve them or make that experience like at that wow factor, right? And make them want to, continue this relationship. Because a lot of times people come into a relationship and they could tell pretty early whether or not they want to continue in some way. Even if they don't know what that next might look like, but they can tell usually in the very beginning or in those earlier stages when you're just getting started around whether if this person came to me tomorrow and presented me a way to work with them further, will I say yes or no? So you want to look at that experience, but one of those ways to really help tighten that and to support that thought process around what that might be next is also in your client onboarding. I won't spend too much time on this, but making sure you have a solid, well thought out, excellently executed onboarding process from the time someone says yes and they pay the invoice or they submit their credit card or however that process looks like on your in your company, that they are then wowed, so that there's an excellent process there, because that's where a lot of revenue is lost just in onboarding alone. So audit that too. Okay, so the next relationship I want you to take time to audit are past clients. So we talked about prospective clients, potentials, current clients, but then let's look at past clients, because again, clients can come back. I know for me personally, I've worked with people and then I took a break for whatever reason, or the project ended or the terms ended, and I went away and I did some things and I'm like, oh, wait, and I came back. So, how are you managing even your former client relationships? Do they ever hear from you? Do you ever reach out? Do you ever like check in, see how they're doing? You typically have all of their information unless you need updates, like they move or something. So, having a system and a process in place to even check in with former clients, because again, have most of the times, I would dare to say, I'm going to be conservative. I'll say seven, but I think the number's higher. 7 out of 10, they can come back and you can conserve them. You can continue to serve them and help them to grow in some way, shape, or form. So, are you continuing to manage that relationship? Not to mention, current and former clients are also great testimonials and referral sources as well. But we're not talking about referrals today, all right? Actually, we are. So looking at those, making sure that you're managing the relationship and also equipping them with the right information. So I'm going to come back and talk about right information when we talk about referral partners. The next one is your warm network. So a lot of us have relationships. You may be in masterminds, you may actually be in networking groups, and you are building these relationships with people and they have no idea what you do. None. They're like, okay. And I can attest to this. I was the chapter president for a women's business organization, and there were people in my chapter who had no idea what I did. They were just like, I knew you were the president, which is fine. I know you had a business, and I knew you were president. I don't even know what do you do? How do you serve your clients? So even in that, having those relationships and managing your warm network, because I was not looking to sell any of them. Wasn't the case. But it was like, wait a second. You can't even refer me if you wanted to because you don't even know what I do, right? So making sure that you are having the conversations, that you are managing the relationships and providing them with the right information. So either they can become a client themselves or they can refer someone else. They're like, oh, wait, here's what, when you hear this, my name shall pop into your mind. Sharing that information with them, which leads me to referral partners and having those. So some of us have refined or clearly defined referral processes. Some of it is a little more loose. So when I say define, I mean like you have a formal referral partner program. I'm a part of a couple of those, right? There's a form people fill out. Like there's all the things. You get the mailing address where they either cut the check or like the PayPal address where they send you to, like there's it's formal. It's very formal. And there's terms and percentages and blah, 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 all the things. That is not required, right? It's not required. But here's some of the things that I want you to consider around referral partner relationships. First, managing referral partner relationships. Even those that have formal referral partner programs, there's an opportunity to circle back and have regular touch points with your referral partners, checking in with them, having a process and a system. Any updates, any new client testimonials, any shifts in how you work. So going back to that client that I was working with on working on her plan recently, one of the areas where I found that was an area to really help make more resilient was she shifted how she works slightly and who she works with, and especially like in terms of her pricing, right? We just talked about pricing and positioning. So this was a great opportunity for her to go back, one, to just touch base. Hey, how you doing? What's been going on in your world? Here's what's going on in mine. But then to have that conversation, here's what's different around who I'm working with now. I appreciate all the referrals that you have been sending me. Thank you. And here's what that now looks like. I'm providing them with resources. It could be a one sheet, but you know what? Before you get all to the fancy stuff that takes time and energy, and you may not have those skills, I know I don't, give them a blurb. Here's an email blurb that you can copy and paste. I always say start with the blurb. Start with the blurb. So you can have a simple blurb, copy, paste. Here's who I work with. Here's what that looks like. Advise them or direct them on what next steps should look like, what to do. So easiest that I recommend is the person they're referring, they CC you, everybody's on the email. Hello, hello, meet so and so, boom, boom. Here are your qualifications. They can add any extra that they may want to add, especially if they're a former client, current client, someone that's worked with you, and they have additional insights. They can add that, not required, but they can add it. And then they send that connection, and then you take it and run with it, right? But the better that we can equip people to support us, sometimes it starts with where I was. Girl, just tell them what you do. What do you do? Who do you do it for? And what does that look like, right? And then taking it a step further, especially when you start talking about actually formalizing certain relationships and certain processes or systems in your business. Now, again, I want you to hear me. It's not required to have it be formal. And you can always grow into that if that's something you're like, oh my gosh, I would love that. Then definitely think about what does that look like in terms of time, revenue, all the things, systems, process, because it takes time to sometimes to set these things up. You got to kind of think through it. Give yourself the time and the space. But the easiest, like I said, start with the blurb and then mind your manners in terms of just say thank you. Okay? Just start with thank you. You don't have to send them a check all the time, but just say, thank you. Thank you, Bob, so much for thinking of me and making this referral. Whether that person ends up being a great client or not, thank you. Just say thank you. Okay. And then, like I said, you can think through based on your brand and how you do things, what that could look like for your company in terms of your formal process or whatever. But you want to, again, do an audit. Who are my current clients, my former clients, especially the ones that you absolutely adored? My warm network. Who my warm network? Especially when you start looking at who are people in my warm network that may work with my people. They may not do the same thing, but they work with my people. We should probably talk, right? And then who are already referral partners, people that are already referring, how can I better equip them to do it a better job, not a better job, but just make it more clear because then that helps them feel good, feel and look good. And it also feels great and looks great for you. Nothing is, I won't say nothing is worse, but it doesn't really feel good when someone makes a referral and they're so excited to make this referral and you're like, that's not what I do. It's not what I do, and this is not who I do it for. But thank you, I think. No, you want to support those people and giving them the information that they need. So, relationships. I want you to take time because relationships can change your business. But again, I want you to take time to do a relationship audit. And the areas that we discussed this week were prospects, so prospective clients, current clients, former clients, your warm network, and your current referral partners, which some people in those previous groups can move to the other referral partner group. But again, those are the relationships I want you to look at because here's the thing, relationships can make the difference. There are things and doors that can open because of relationships that no amount of money can open for you. I could do a whole episode, probably a whole series, honestly, around just the doors that relationships help to open for me just because I was out and about and talking to people and letting them know, or and being very strategic about it. I remember when I shifted my business, we made a pivot 2017 and launched what is now this version of the Doing an Agency, where we were focusing on actually this would we launched the agency because what I was doing prior to this is not this at all. And we changed the name. So launching the agency, totally shifting the work that I'm doing. And I remember at the time I was working with my counsel and they were like, you're not updating your website. You're not doing all these things that I probably would have naturally wanted to do. You're just going to talk to people. And it felt so counterintuitive. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. This is my job to just talk to people. But they were like, your goal right now, your one job is to have conversations and let people know what it is that you do now. That was it. Connect with people, check in with them, which I want to do. That's just naturally who I am as a person. What's up? How you doing? What's going on in your world? And oh, by the way, here's what's going on in my world. And if you happen to know of anyone that may need these services, I can't remember my exact words, it's something like this. Here's where I am. Sometimes I will forget to say that if I'm being completely honest. Like I just forget. I get so caught up sometimes just having a conversation like, oh wait, I was supposed to say that. But anyway, that's what I do. Like I was good in that moment of explaining to people, here's what I do now. And here's who I work with now, because that's not what I did then or who I worked with then. And I would just have conversations. And that's how I got several clients because people will be like, oh, and in some of those instances, people will be like, well, that's me. And I would be like, oh, for real? Oh, well, let's talk. I remember one conversation. Oh my gosh, it was one of my clients. When we talked, I kid you not, because I think because also because of the work that I do, but I've also seen a lot of just really shady things that I work really hard not to do. And I was having a conversation with someone. It was a coffee talk, literally. Like that was the whole premise of our reason for getting together was just to get to know you, have a virtual coffee talk, all of that. So I didn't come into this conversation with any type of sales hat on at all. I know I lead a sales agency. That's a whole nother conversation for a different day. Anyway, I come into this conversation, complete coffee talk. Hey, how you doing? Here's what I do. What do you do? What's going on? How's the weather? Blah, 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 blah. Whatever we talk about in coffee talk, right? And so, of course, we talk about like she told me what she does. I was like, oh, that's cool, blah, blah, blah. And I told her what I do. And then she goes, well, what would it look like to work with you? And I was like, wait, what? No, thankfully, I was quickly like, I know what to do, but it was just one of those times like, Nadia, what are you doing? And it was like, oh, well, this is what it looks like. But my point was, my intent in going into that conversation wasn't to walk away with a new client. Like, I was clear that we are just here to talk coffee, get to know each other. Of course, we'll talk about business, but I feel that there are get to know you conversations, and then there are formal sales conversations. Obviously, sometimes those two mix and they intertwine, but I also am not a fan of let's talk for coffee and then sell me your thing. Like that's just not, and people have been burned by that and it just turns people off. So again, but when you look at relationships, that's my whole point. Sorry, squirrel. The whole point was relationships in that and having a reason and a purpose of following up, having a plan. So then we actually, on our team, we had all these relationships. My goal was to have 100 just because of the purpose of not that all 100 people would necessarily be referral partners, but it was 100 conversations, 100 people to create the habit. So we had our allies list, people that they may never hire us, but we felt either had our best interests at heart, liked us enough to refer us to someone, mention us to somebody, share a resource at some point in time. And, like that, we had our criteria. And then we had this list and I had conversations with every single one of those people over obviously course of time. And then there are relationships that naturally rise to the top and they fit in certain categories. So then we were strategic once a quarter. Then make sure I touch this place with this person. And I have an actual conversation, or at least attempt to, because again, people are busy and you get busy, they're busy, and it doesn't always work. But the point is you want to be intentional. That's the whole point of managing and maintaining these relationships. And then when, things shifted in the business and now I may not necessarily have the time to do that, then it was like, okay, well, how else can we maintain this relationship? Maybe it's sending postcards. So each week set aside time because again, these are your allies. These are people that are close. So you probably have if you don't have it, ask for it, this information, writing a postcard. Or, like internally, we send birthday cards and anniversary cards and holiday cards. And if we get wind of it, we don't always, I don't always see it or hear it. But if there was a loss, sympathy cards, right? To maintain the relationship, the humanness of the people around you and in your network and your clients, and not just always be in that focus of buy my thing. Yes, that's a part of it. And again, relationships change everything. And so I just wanted to really bring that up and that is one of the reasons why it's one of the 6 indicators around revenue resilience from my perspective, because I know the power of relationships and I know what relationships have done for not only me personally, but also for my business. And it is why that we work to be intentional about that area in my business. And then I support my clients and being intentional in that area in their own businesses, because that is an area that can be strengthened to help you be resilient from a revenue perspective, or even from a sustainability perspective. We're being all the way honest within your business. Relationships matter and they deserve to be treated with time, attention, and care. And not even attention, but intention as well. Relationships. So take time this week, set aside 15, 20, 30 minutes to say, hey, I'm going to take a moment to do even a high level audit of these different relationships, these different areas in my business, and identify the areas we can do better. We can do a better job, and then put together a loose plan. Doesn't have to be all the things right now of how we're going to make the adjustment moving forward. Because you can do this. You can build a business that has revenue resilience. It's going to take some intention. It's going to take you being intentional about it, but it can be done. This is another episode of Sales Culture Unfiltered with Dr. Nadia. Signing off. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. That's a wrap on today's episode of Sales Culture Unfiltered. But the conversation doesn't end here. If something sparked your interest today, connect with me on LinkedIn or visit our website at thedoyenagency.com to explore how we're helping sales teams build cultures that last. And if you found this episode valuable, don't keep it to yourself. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow sales leader. See you next time.